questioning the text, right? Especially when you're reading, you can ask them about the stories. What is his name? What does he like to do? Point out information in the text that she can include subsequently. Do you see how the author talks about the sister's dress? Just have to point it out so that the child pays a little bit more attention. Then the next time, those details come through. And publish. Right? Publish, because now especially you've got a lot of online resources. I know my children loved it when in school. My daughter was from Fairfield Methodist Primary School. I have to thank the teachers at Fairfield Methodist for this. They would have a board where they would put up their children's compositions. It was a huge thing for my children when their compositions went up. And when I went to fetch them from school, I've got 5 minutes. When I went to fetch them from school, this was some things that I needed to do. I need to stand there and read the story. So look at, especially we've got online resources now, like redjumper.net, book creator. Very interesting site, and you can use it on iPad. Go in there and your child can just write the sentences, and then you actually come and create a book. So that gives the child a sense of them being an author, right? And if you are doing a dictated story, that means the child tells you the story and you're writing it down online for them, read over and over again, because the child would just love hearing her own story again, even if it doesn't make sense, even if the story meanders a great deal, all right? And it doesn't have a nice ending, it doesn't matter, because the more you read it, the child will begin to feel there isn't an ending. And then the child would want to end it in some way. But the internalization is important. So I've showed you this. This is an online story starter where they have got the beginning of the story, and then you can go in and continue the story. So this is a website that you can use as well. This is another website. I've got these websites on my last slide, where they have creating a book where you can put in your own child's name and photograph. And then if the older children, you've got the 8+ and 10+, where they can create their books as well. So this is a very interesting website as well. So these are some good websites for you. Is this on your slide? Yeah. All of them? And I've got some more here. Okay, Poplet is what you can use for mind maps if you want to help your child organize. All right, it's a very child-friendly, where the child can go in and then plan the sequence of the story. Red Jumper is what I just showed you for book creating. Medibems and TikTok are both online book creations. All right, so they are both. These resources are all pretty good ones that you can use, because you have a lot more online resources. You don't have to depend on paper and pen as I did. All right. So yeah, so that's my conclusion. I think the best gift you can give a writer is a reader with an open heart and an open mind. And to conclude, I like to say, may you be that gift to your children. Thank you.
I have a child in Sec 1, one in P5. A lot of what you say seems to apply to primary school, but I could see, they doing that when they were younger, especially for the Sec 1. They would just write an event, But for the Sec 1 kid who's going through puberty and Sec 1, it is pretty difficult to get him to write anything, except perhaps SMSs. So do you have any offhand, suggestions, since your daughter is now?
I have to tell you something as well. A, he's a boy. It happens. B, he's a teenager. It happens. Reason why I tend to focus on young children is because I think when they are young, they don't mind the sense of privacy. They don't have a strong sense of privacy. Honestly, I think as a teenager, I did not read their writings. But what I do give is, every year, I give my children journals. And to this day, I think both my children write in journals. When they went online, my second daughter locked her journal. I had to beg my children to let me be friends on Facebook. All right. But I think when they are teenagers, Sec 1, Sec 2, we really need to give them some space. It is not a matter of them not wanting to be close to us anymore, but it is also a time when they can very easily slip away, right? So, because I think at that time, friends become a lot more important. So I wouldn't be very worried. My time's up? Yeah, okay. It's okay, sorry, my fault. I think I wouldn't be very worried if he has stopped writing these ways that it's been done. I think there's also a lot more writing that happens in school, and there tends to be a lot more structure as well, you know. So I think I would just suggest giving him a journal and encouraging him and just asking, still talking.
I have this problem. I have two boys, P5 and P2. All right, my P5 boys like to read P2, so-called P2 books, which is like things like B Squares, Horrid Henry, and this kind of things. In fact, the school also discouraged him to read Diary of the Wimpy Kid and all this kind of things, because for P5 exam, it's not helpful, for sure. So, any suggestion?
Can I ask if this is the only thing he's reading?
Mostly because he likes funny stories,
Yeah.
humor.
Yeah. I think it's not so.
Things like Harry Potter puts him off because it's too thick.
Yeah, it's true. Even my husband doesn't like read Harry Potter because it's too thick. He's an adult. No. There's this book by Vikram Seth. I kind of tore the book into pieces so that I can carry just one piece at a time because, yeah. Sometimes it may be that the child needs comfort. Especially, I think, P4, P5, when the transition to the upper primary is happening. Sometimes they go back and they start reading P2, P3 books because of the comfort of knowing that they can handle this. And sometimes it's the comfort of familiarity, especially if they've enjoyed it before. I don't think it's something that you need to be worried about unless that is the only thing that the child is reading. All right? But if he is reading that together with other things that they're reading, I think there's no harm. Because it is essentially going back and revisiting. I think all of us at some point do go back and revisit and reread. It's just that we don't do it so much because, we've got other stuff to do. But I think if you emphasize and keep telling him that it's not going to help you, you shouldn't be reading this, then the sense of guilt comes in, which is really not something that you want to create.
In the library, there's a 10 to 12 inch.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so I say pick anything from there.
Oh.
There's a wide range. Kind of thing. Because he keep going to the 7 to 9, definitely.
Well, I would suggest, remember, choice. You need to give him choice, connect, as well as challenge. You can't just challenge.
And then he will go and pick the graphic novels and comics.
Graphic novels are great. They're very fun. All right, they're really great fun. And there are very good graphic novels out there. We run a workshop on graphic novels, using graphic novels as a teaching aid for ELIS. So it doesn't matter because it's still viewing and representing, all right? And if you go to O levels, you find that there's an O level situational writing actually needs him to look at graphics and decipher graphics, and it's a skill that not many students actually have. So don't worry about that. But perhaps I would suggest negotiation. I would say, give me one book from your 10 to 12 age, and then maybe you can have 2 books from your 7 to 9. So you still give him some ability to give him a choice. You're still helping him to connect from what he already knows, the familiarity, and a little bit of a challenge of the next level. If you tell him, don't bring home anything, I don't want to see any book that is not from your age group, then I think that's very difficult for the child to transition. Yeah.
What do you think about memorization? What I mean by memorization is there's a school of thought that what you said at first, learning rhetoric, reading good classic literature, age appropriate, memorizing passages, and then copywriting it. What do you think of this? I was thinking of employing that in small doses for my children.
Okay, there is some room for copywriting. Okay, and essentially, I didn't bring that, but when my daughter started my second daughter started, she started by writing out Peter and Jane. She would write out the whole book. And I also have a niece, Ashwini, who would actually, I would have those texts somewhere at home, where she would just copy out the whole 3 pages of her, like every day she would come back and she would like copyright. There is something in that, in the sense that the child begins to internalize language structures. So when the child reads and then she copies, there is an internalization of language structure. So there's some value in that. The problem would be that you still need the child to do transference. So you need the child to move on, to start thinking of her own structures. You don't want the child to reach a stage where she says, I cannot reproduce the same level of writing and therefore I will not try. Yeah. So I think I wouldn't suggest this as the sole way in which you want to like teach, but it essentially, I think, I don't know about you, but once you start reading, if you read the same author, if you find that the child is reading, or even if you yourself, I had that problem when I was reading Jodi Picoult. It's like one after another, and then I started talking in the same structure, you know. And when I was teaching Jane Austen, etc., I find that my sentences began to get longer, you know, the way the Victorian, right? So there's some internalization that does happen. And that can be fine, because when you're open to good authors, you begin to see. But if that is the sole means by which the child is writing, I wouldn't say, yeah.
I have two different questions. One is, you mentioned about asking questions to develop a child's reading, writing, etc. But what if the child stops you from asking questions? Yeah, in the sense of, for example, if you're reading a story, they're so excited to move on, and they don't want you to answer.
Go ahead. If you're so excited about the story, don't stop. Ask questions, okay? Can you imagine you're watching this exciting program on TV, and then you get a commercial break? That's the same feeling that your child has, except worse, now it's comprehension question that you're talking about.
So, if that's the case, we can't achieve the objectives you mentioned earlier on. How do we get around that?
Well, the thing is that there's already connection. If the child is already enjoying the reading, that means the child is already enjoying the love of the language, because that's what we were talking about, getting the child to love the language. So if the child's enjoying the language and he's reading, it doesn't matter. The strategies that we're talking about is if you find that your child is not making connections, then you want to stop and say, what do you think is going to happen next? Why do you think the person is distressed like this, right? So that is for a child who is not making connections, not enjoying the language. If your child is already enjoying the book, read it.
Okay. My second question is, almost every child is reading Geronimo Stilton books. Does it come Geronimo Stilton books? Does it come under your list of good writers? Thank you.
I am 54 years old. I have a different sense of good writers. I am sure he is. If he can get your child to read and go back and read, and he can go back to read, then it is a phase. All right. I think when I was growing, I read nothing except Annie Blyton for a very long time, for a very, very, very long time. Right. And at a point when Annie Blyton books were pulled out of the library, I was thinking, what? You know, I didn't understand what was so politically incorrect about gollywogs, and of course there were black people, and I didn't see anything wrong with that, right? So I was like quite surprised, because that was my sole diet when I was growing up. It took me to go into university to actually know there was other kinds of children's literature, right? So I think if the child is fixated on a certain author, it's just a phase. But the more you say, is this all you're going to read, then you create very negative associations, all right? But I think while the child is reading that, you can talk about some other book and say, hey, so-and-so thinks that this is a good book, you know, would you want to look at it? In addition to, so the child begins to like move away from what he is reading. The important thing is that don't make him feel guilty, or don't make him feel pressured, or don't make him feel that there is a certain standard that he needs to achieve. Thank you for giving up your Saturday morning, and I think you had feedback from